There are a number of authors who've tried to lay out key principles of Catholic social teaching. The U.S. bishops have delineated 7 in kind of a pedagogical document that they did originally in the early 1990s when there was 6, and then in the late 1990s they laid out the same 6 with a 7th, which was care for creation, which reflected the evolution of Catholic social teaching in terms of ecological responsibility. I think one of the easiest ways to remember it is there are 4 principles laid out in the compendium of Catholic social teaching from the Vatican. Those are, first, human dignity. Everything starts with the dignity and sanctity of the human person. The second is the common good, which is actually an old Greek principle about the responsibility of those in office and of citizens was for the common good, which was respecting the rights of individuals within the community, respecting the role of groups and the rights of groups within the community, and then peace, which is based in security. Because a nation, for example, at civil war, will not be able to protect the dignity of individuals or the common good of the community. So first is human dignity, the second is the common good. A third principle that comes from 1931 is the principle of subsidiarity, articulated by Pope Pius XI in Quadragesimo Anno. And it basically says, this is the way I try to explain it to people, that you try to do things in society at the level closest to the people involved at the most effective level. So for example, the way I put it is, if a family can solve its problems, keep the community out, the neighborhood out. If the neighborhood can solve its problems, keep the city out. If the city can solve its problems, keep the state out, and so on and so forth. That principle basically is rooted in human dignity, that if I can solve my problems individually, my family doesn't need to get involved. And so you move things as low as you can, but you move it to the lowest effective level. So the neighborhood can't solve the balance of payments problem for the United States. You've got to move up to the level of the national government, and you've got to move to international trade questions, etc. So there's a fourth principle, which is solidarity, articulated most, actually in Vatican II, but most by Pope John Paul II, which has to do with our responsibility really for people all over the world. And so while subsidiarity moves things down locally, solidarity says we have responsibility that's to the local community, to the city, to the state, to the global community as well. I think another principle that we ought to put in here as we talk about this reflects, I think Pope Paul VI put it this way. He said, the rule of love which once upon a time applied to the neediest around us now applies to all the people of the world. That's kind of solidarity. But then the U.S. bishops said, when we talk in Catholic social teaching about individual problems like hunger, etc., or about peace problems, you have to address systems and structures as well as individuals. You have to deal with the systems of government, you have to deal with cultural systems within society at large, etc. So you've got to deal with both individual actions and with addressing systems and structures, which is why Catholic social teaching talks about public policy, it talks about governmental policy, it talks about laws that Congress passes, it talks about actions by the United Nations, etc. We address systems and structures as an expression of our faith. And so those are some basic principles. As I say, some authors have 10 principles, some have 12 principles. I have, in my own first book about Catholic social teaching, I have about 26 key ideas. So there are many ways to break it out. But those are some of the fundamental principles within Catholic social teaching.